You're fine. Soon gonna be Pesach. Soon gonna be Pesach.
Yeah.
Soon gonna be Pesach. I told you when I went and lost to the tapas, she asked me how to send regards to you.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I just heard somebody say, soon it's going to be Pesach. And that's indeed very true. Soon it's going to be Pesach. So we are getting ready, and that's what we're doing here from now till Pesach. For the most part, I would like to dedicate our classes and shiurim to Pesach. So here we continue yesterday's discussion about our Pesach dinner, of body and soul sitting down for dinner together to enjoy this meal. We'll do a quick recap in a moment, and then we will proceed for where we're to continue on this theme. So if anyone's joining us on Facebook, we're just launching the Facebook page right now. YouTube, we're getting it onto YouTube in a second as well, and then we're good to go. Any questions from yesterday's class before we begin? No, if no questions, then let's hit the road. Yesterday we talked about how on generally, just a second, I have to recap what we said. We spoke about the mitzvah at the Pesach Seder, the step where we break our middle matzah. And what is that step called? Yachatz, where we set aside a piece of the matzah, and we're going to use this for afikoman later on. And many people have a custom that the kids go to snatch the afikoman to hold a ransom. And we debated if that's a good idea or not, whether this is a custom. Now, I agree, it's a Jewish custom. It's a Jewish custom. Many people do it. And it's an important part of our Seder. It reminds us of the Korban Pesach, the Paschal sacrifice. But others debate whether it is appropriate to inculcate a custom where kids are going to be stealing, snatching, taking something. But the main idea behind it is that we want the children to be engaged. We want that the Pesach Seder should be something that is captivating for us, for the kid inside us, as well as for the children, the actual children who are present. But we're also children, remember. And you have to remain young at heart. So that being the case, the question we left yesterday with was, why is the afikoman at the end of our Pesach Seder? Why is it the very last aspect of our Seder? Shouldn't the afikoman be prominent earlier on? Shouldn't it be something that we are enjoying earlier on in the Seder? I'm sorry, I'm going to stop the share of the screen for a moment because I do need to send a message out to someone, and I can't do it while sharing the screen. So apologies for that. But the point I'm making is that if it's all about the Korban Pesach, I'm saying the Korban Pesach is to be consumed, is to be eaten at the very end of the meal when you're already full, then doesn't that take away from its prominence? And when we explain the idea that it's similar to royalty, you know, when you come to a Pesach retreat, there's always food available. When you're in a royalty position, you never have to worry about eating. There's always food around. You never go hungry. So perhaps symbolizing that royalty aspect, like kings who have the option of eating whenever they want without ever getting hungry. That's why the Korban Pesach is consumed at the end of our Pesach Seder. That's why the Korban Pesach the Paschal lamb is eaten at the end. The egg we eat at the beginning of our meal, symbolizing the Korban Chagiga, which was consumed at the beginning. So now the question, of course, is why do we give it that kind of, why is it that it's the end? Wouldn't it be more prominent perhaps as the main course? That's really our question. Everyone with me? Now, what I'd like to do today is to talk a little bit about, this is a little bit funny, something I sent that didn't go yesterday. All right. Anyways, the idea that we're going to describe today, we're going to take it a step further, is a deeper reason why we eat the Korban Pesach on a full stomach. Okay, hopefully with that insight, you're wondering, what is its relevance? Try to make everything relevant in life. So as we discuss this, we're going to find its relevance to us. Now, last night, what do you do when you can't fall asleep? What's your favorite pastime? I was struggling to fall asleep last night. I'll tell you what I did. I went to learn Gemara. Because when you learn Gemara, you have an easier time falling asleep. And yes, it works very well like a charm. If you don't believe me, try it out. Opened the Gemara, and I fell asleep pretty soon after. So this, of course, tells us that you should learn Gemara if you're an insomniac. You'll fall asleep right away. Now, that's not what it tells us. It tells us, I'll share with you some insights I learned from the Gemara, which will hopefully help us understand a little bit of what we're learning right now. A little bit of this discussion could assist us in this topic. So give me 1 second. I want to just pick up the Gemara because this was a little bit of a fascinating insight from the Gemara. Give me 1 moment. Okay, so I opened the tractate Pesachim because Pesach is coming up. And my thought was, with Pesach coming up, and we're learning here about Pesach together, I should share with you a little bit of insight about Pesach from the Gemara. So by the way, if any of you are struggling with falling asleep, you can fall asleep now that I'm going to share with you some Talmud. So remember we discussed before about wouldn't it be better to eat the afikoman, such an important, prominent module of the Seder, as the main dish, right? That was our question. Now the afikoman must instead come at the end when your belt buckles are popping. You just ate so much delicious food. The caterer, whether it's yourself, your wife, Maishis, the retreat, wherever you're eating, we usually tend to eat nice, good food at the Pesach Seder. Besides the point, we filled up on matzah and lettuce and all the other goodies before. Interesting, the Gemara tells us that you really shouldn't eat too much before the Seder. So here's a very fascinating thing. And by the way, it's not only before the Seder. This is a concept that's related to every single Shabbos. So I'm going to share with you this very fascinating idea. It's a very practical thing that the Gemara tells us, and it runs contrary to a basic. Let's try to understand this whole thing, because if you want to eat the afikoman when you're full, it's the opposite of what's supposed to do every Friday. Do you know that every Friday you're not supposed to eat a big meal late in the afternoon? Did you know that? There's a very basic reason for it. The reason is because we're supposed to enter Shabbos and enjoy our Shabbos meal with a robust, hearty appetite. As they say, leteavon. In fact, that's the word the Gemara uses. You want to have a good appetite. And the same thing is Pesach. We're not eating matzah already from now, according to the Chabad tradition. The Mishnah Brura says from Rosh Chodesh Nisan. The Gemara says from Erev Pesach at least. Erev Pesach in the morning, don't eat matzah. Why? Teavon. You should have a good hearty appetite when the Pesach Seder comes. If that's the case, just like every Friday, you're not supposed to have a big meal Friday afternoon. And the same thing comes Pesach in the chapter of Gemara Pesachim, chapter Arvei Pesachim. It starts off telling us this rule that Lo yochel adam, a person shouldn't eat too much before from mincha time. What's mincha time? Mid-afternoon. Call it 3 o'clock or so. don't eat a meal. Why? On a regular Friday, we say, so if you come into Shabbos, the te'avon, with good, hearty, robust appetite. And the same thing comes to Pesach. And the truth is, there's a debate in the Gemara. According to, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Right? We scholars, I'm talking about Gemara, it's never clear, there's always a debate. Rabbi Yossi says, eat as much as you like until nightfall. Now, even though Rabbi Yossi permits it, the halacha is that you should avoid eating a meal if possible. Doesn't mean you can't have a snack, but you shouldn't eat a big meal. And, Jewish mothers have known this intuitively for generations. Preparing a lavish 3-course meal for everyone to feast on as you come home from shul on Friday night, as you're going to begin your day of rest, Shabbos, enjoying the delicious, full gastronomic delights of your favorite Shabbos foods, right? That's what we like to do. So the question, of course, is if you're supposed to wait, if you're supposed to not eat much of a meal on a Friday evening, and the same thing the Gemara tells us, Erev Pesach specifically, don't eat a big meal because you want to have a hearty appetite for the Seder dinner. So why is it that the Korban Pesach, the Pesach lamb, which is also a mitzvah and a main staple of your Seder meal, is to be eaten on a full stomach at the end of a delicious 3-course meal? Not only is there no appetite, but you might find it difficult to eat anything at all. Good question. That's the question we have. Korban Pesach, as we discussed here. Let's just clear up our screen so you can all see. We hide the panel. Just a moment. How do I hide this? Here we go. Can everyone see the screen now better? So we're saying that the Korban Pesach commemorates the Paschal sacrifice, right? The question is, why is it saved for last? Why is it not the main course of a meal? But furthermore, I'm saying now that the reason the Gemara tells us, as I studied last night, that I'm sharing with you now, you're meant to have a hearty appetite. So why is it that the Korban Pesach, such an important part of our Pesach experience, according to the law, is meant to be eaten on a full stomach at the end of your meal, which is what the afikomen that we eat today is exactly that. It's eaten at the end of your meal, right? So to try to understand this contradiction, we have to first understand on somewhat of a deeper level, why do we eat the Korban Pesach? Why do we eat this lamb, the Pesach lamb, on a full stomach? Let me take you into the Gemara, because that's what we like to do. And if I had to study some Gemara in the middle of the night, I'm going to share it with you now. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabba Bar Chana. Rabba Bar Chana, a great Talmudic sage, who had many very interesting stories. He says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Let's pick up my Gemara here on my phone. Says the Gemara, My dichsiv ki yesharim darchei Hashem. It's written, what's the meaning of this verse in Hosea? It says that the paths of God are right, yesharim are righteous. V'tzadikim yelchu bam, and the righteous, the just, walk in God's ways. U'poishim yechashlu bam, but transgressors, they stumble over them. What does this mean? And he explains that this is analogous to a case of two people who each roasted their Korban Pesach. One ate it for the sake of a mitzvah, while the other ate it for pleasure. Lamb chops, roasted on a spit. What a delicious braai, right? Two people enjoying it. One for the purpose of a mitzvah, because God said so, and the other says it's good food. I'm enjoying my lunch or dinner. Says the Gemara, of the one who ate it for the sake of a mitzvah, the verse says, and the just walk in them. Of the one who ate it for the sake of pleasure, the verse says, but transgressors stumble over it. And the Gemara concludes, the echad achlu, while the other ate it for pleasure. What does this mean? Machmas taiva, ate it hungrily to satisfy his desire. Reminds me of a good old joke. You know, the story is told of a young man who was passing through a certain town during his travels. He sees a new face in the shul. Someone invited him to his house. The hostess graciously invited the young man, come enjoy a hot meal, get a good night's rest. Says the first course was served. The hosts began the typical round, Jewish geography, as we like to do at our Shabbos tables. Where you from? The lady asks him. Says, I come from Minsk. Minsk, it's wonderful. I have a cousin in Minsk, Reb Chaim Yankel. How's he doing? So he says, I'm sorry to tell you, but he's dead. Right. She's serving the course. My cousin's dead. Oh, Chaim Yankel's dead. I can't believe it. She's devastated. She can't believe it. She's just torn. And she starts to serve the next course. This time her husband speaks up. So how's my old friend Yitzchak Shmuel? I haven't seen him 5 years. I haven't been to Minsk in a long time. How's he doing? Did he ever get married? And he says, I'm sorry to tell you, but he's dead. Oh my gosh. Oh, he spills his piping hot chicken soup. My God, my friend Yankis Shmuel is dead. Oy. And you can imagine everybody sad, and this guy's fressing his food. This guy's digging in delicious food, the meat, the potatoes, everything. And finally, the couple musters the courage. And how's our relative, our dear Mechutin, the Moshe, father of our son-in-law, Rebbe? And of course, what does this guy say? Sorry to tell you, he's dead. And this time, the couple breaks into tears. They can't believe it. What's going on? Everybody's dead. And this fellow says, As ich ess, sind alle gestorben. When I eat, everyone's dead. Here you have two people doing the same exact thing, but one is viewed as righteous, and the other as a glutton, as a transgressor. Why? They're both doing the same thing. They're both eating lamb chops. Why is one righteous and the other is a glutton? What's the difference? The difference is only in their intentions. The Korban Pesach, you can imagine, it must have been delicious. It was good food, lamb chops, inside a nice lafa with this maror relish, right? Charoses. It had to be delicious. But if all I care about when eating is how good it tastes, I'm missing the point completely. The point is to eat in order to fulfill the mitzvah, God's command. That's why I'm eating. So it's true that eating the Korban Pesach is a mitzvah, just like eating your Shabbos meal is a mitzvah. The truth is, eating any meal is a mitzvah. We've spoken about this before. What do you do with energy that you got from that meal? Are you using that energy to perform another mitzvah? Then gesundheit, eat any delicious food you like. If the point only is I could just fill my tummy and be like any other animal out there, what difference is it between me and a grizzly bear? The monkey. But there's a difference. At the Shabbos meal, the truth is, the mitzvah is to enjoy the meal. That is the mitzvah. That's right. God, it's something called Oneg Shabbos, taking pleasure in Shabbos. You might recall our series of Shabbos courses that we did a few months ago. The mitzvah is to enjoy the food in honor of Shabbos. But on Pesach, the mitzvah is to eat the sacrifice. That's the commandment. The personal enjoyment is not the objective. The Korban Pesach is meant to be eaten on a full stomach, demonstrating exactly that. Yes, it's the idea of that royalty can eat whatever they want, whenever they want, not hungry. But unlike the Shabbos meal, which is eaten to satisfy our appetite, to enjoy the meal itself, Korban Pesach is to be eaten for the sake of the mitzvah. Even if I'm full, even if I can't eat more, I still have to eat the Korban Pesach. with the same gusto, with the same pleasure as if I was hungry. Not because I'm hungry, not because I'm enjoying lamb chops, but because God said, God instructed us to fulfill this mitzvah. Not all mitzvahs are difficult. Some of them, in fact, are very enjoyable. Eating the Korban Pesach must be an enjoyable mitzvah. It tastes good, and enjoying a mitzvah is fine. You should enjoy the mitzvahs you do. But when we get too caught up in the pleasure of the experience, then we lose sight of the true value of the mitzvah. Then it becomes about us. We need to find that balance. Enjoying, doing it for the purpose of God said so. So to avoid this, the Torah teaches us to go to the other extreme. We eat the afikomen. You're eating that last matzah, which symbolizes, which commemorates, which recalls the Korban Pesach. We eat it at the very end of our meal. When there's nothing else, you ate your dessert. Make sure on your Pesach Seder night that you ate a good meal. And the afikomen comes at the conclusion of that meal. Now that you're full, your body's full, you ate everything. Oh, now you eat your Korban Pesach. And you eat it with great joy. You need to appreciate what a mitzvah is all about, to connect with the divine will. That's the purpose of a mitzvah. And it's in this sense that the Korban Pesach points to a fascinating and crucial pathway in divine service. The path of sometimes, listen to me carefully, sometimes ignoring the body. So we asked the question, why do we wait to eat Shabbos dinner and eat the Korban Pesach while we're full? And now we're going to discuss this and try to understand this fascinating idea. And please bear with me. At the Shabbos table, we explained it is a mitzvah to enjoy the food with all the gusto and all. But on Pesach, the mitzvah is to eat. But for the purpose of fulfilling, not to enjoy myself, but to connect to the divine will. That's the key. Now, the inherent problem we're all born to solve is that dichotomy between heaven and earth. The whole divine service is about finding a way to bring peace between body and soul. But how could there ever be such peace if the body and soul seem to be so diametrically different? The body desires earth, the soul likes heaven. The soul wants to break free, the body traps it. How is that supposed to work? It's a good question. And it's a tough job. Any of you who've been joining us for our Tanya classes and Chassidus study know this is what Tanya is all about. Understanding this is our challenge. Every day we have this challenge, right? So my friends, it's not easy. For some, the only imaginable way out is to pick one side of the conflict, to say the other is the enemy. So some people are very spiritually attuned, and that means they're going to eliminate all physical pleasure. Some people go to the opposite extreme. They become only gluttonous, physically indulgent people, and they eliminate all traces of spirituality from their life. They believe it's the only way to alleviate the pain of the body-soul divide is to eliminate, to eschew, to break free from whatever the distraction is. They pick a side. Now, anyone who wants the soul to win, if you're going to just promote the soul, maybe you're going to become a hermit, an ascetic, resisting the body. The problem with that is, of course, you have to come to terms sometimes with the true reality that as human beings, we have our shortcomings, we have our flaws. And if I'm only going to take the side of the soul, what's going to happen? I'm going to be presented with real tough challenges in life. And the reality of life is that day in and day out, we all have struggles of our soul and body. And it's a constant struggle, and it's impossible to take one over the other. Because if I become just physical oriented, at some stage, my spirit's going to kick in. And as it's explained in Tanya, most of us are going to never fully emancipate the soul. We're always going to have those struggles. Because God created us as human beings. Human beings are not wired for perfection. The awareness of how far we are from our spiritual goals, it can be excruciating. It can be demoralizing. Or we could tap into the reality and find that balance in ourselves. So are we doomed to a life of that internal agony, of constant struggle? Will there ever be a chance to live life without that struggle? And in Tanya, we learn the answer is, of course, the challenges are there, and they're not going away anytime soon. But we have a secret weapon in our arsenal. What's that weapon that you have? Sometimes ignore the body. No, I'm not perfect, but it doesn't mean I can't celebrate the successes that my soul does achieve. Sometimes my body has unhealthy desires. And if I concede and capitulate every single day to those desires, then I'm a failure, right? That's why we have to learn to sometimes ignore my body's desires. Not easy, but that's something we have to try to do. That's part of the process. Maybe that is what this process and procedure of the Afikoman is teaching us to go about. How we're able to refine ourselves by sometimes, we have to know when is appropriate to let the soul win over the body. So it's not always soul, it's not always body. We have to have that balance. We have to know, when you go into a meeting, do you not shut your phone and close off all distractions? Same thing. You're going into shul, you want to pray, you're going to turn away from certain distractions. We have to sometimes know when to tune out of the body's desires. If my kids have had too many sweets, I have to know when to say no. And we have the kid inside each of us. We also have to know when to tell ourselves, not right now. Now is not the time. We need that self-control. Very simple. So it says in Tanya, true, the body may be abominable and loathsome sometimes, but it's through the body that we achieve our goal. God put us body and soul as a journey of coming together. They have to work and operate in synthesis with each other. Every time we do a mitzvah, the soul is experiencing bliss. It's having a party. Your body has issues? Okay, you work on it with that. But if right now your soul has a reason to celebrate, this is a time to ignore the distractions of the body. Don't let the body's desires ruin the party. And this is a lesson we can take from the Korban Pesach, which has to be eaten how? On a full stomach. It's the notion of telling the body, the animal soul, even for a short while, I don't need you right now. I have a lot going for me spiritually. Thank you very much, because I have a soul. And the journey works together. Right now, I'm paying attention to the soul. You see, eating the sacrifice on an empty stomach would be inviting the unwanted guest to a party. A guest who's going to make trouble at your party. You want that guest? As long as the body has an appetite, you'd have to negotiate with it. How much of this mitzvah is for God and soul? How much is for the body? So instead, we send the body away for a bit. Not by starving it, but by giving the body first a delicious, delectable meal. Let the body enjoy a whole full dinner. And then that the body's taken care of, now let the body wander off for a while, so to say, and let the soul enjoy the mitzvah of Pesach. Like the story that my father always told about this guy. When I eat, everyone's dead. This guy tuned out of existence of anything else. He's enjoying his meal at the moment. Now, I'm not, it's a silly old joke my father used to relate. But the point, of course, is telling us how we ourselves, we need to be able to tune into the moment by giving a delicious 3-course dinner to our body. The body's taken care of. Now we're speaking of focusing on the soul in the mitzvah. And thereby we can enjoy the afikoman for the purpose of the mitzvah, not for the purpose of indulging in more food. Hopefully we understand now why it's so important to eat the Korban Pesach on a full stomach. What about the Shabbos meal? If the benefits of ignoring the body when eating the Korban Pesach are so great, then why do we make a point of building our appetites before the Shabbos meal? Why does it say in the Mishnah that on Friday you shouldn't eat a big meal so you have a hearty appetite for Shabbos dinner? Now it's true, we explained before that on Shabbos we're meant to eat the meal. The meal is part of the mitzvah. But based on what we just explained, this idea that the point of a mitzvah is to serve God and not for self-indulgence. How does that work? So hopefully in our remaining time, we can explore why it's still desirable to eat a Shabbos meal with a large appetite. And this year we have Shabbos and then Pesach. You can enjoy your Shabbos meal and then understand how to build the appetite in for the Pesach meal. So I hope you have a full stomach and understand now that eating the Korban Pesach is a matter of serving God. And therefore we have to sometimes ignore the body. But how do we ignore the body? By taking care of the body, not neglecting it, right? Which is something we read in last week's Parsha. For those who were in shul, I apologize for repeating it. But the Vart of the Baal Shem Tov, very powerful and profound thought. He says, Ki tireh chamar sanacha, when you see the donkey of your enemy, roivetz tachat masai, it's struggling with its burden. V'chadalta me'azavla, and you are hesitant to assist it. What does the Torah say? Azov tazov ima, you should certainly help it. The basic understanding of that verse is that when you're on the road and you see your enemy, got a flat tire, a dead battery, whatever it might be, you look at your enemy and go, ha ha ha, well deserved. Nah, right? The Torah says, you are hesitant to help him because he's your enemy. You should still help him. When you see he's struggling with his load, help him out. His car stuck on the side of the road, help him out. I remember that happening to me once in a different context. I was once somewhere with a friend. We had an old teacher who really gave us a hard time in high school, made our year miserable. And he was stuck and asked me for a ride. And I turned to my friend and I said, "No, what do you say we do?" Of course, we gave him a ride, but we gave him some ride on that ride. Gave him a little bit of a hard time. The Torah says, don't hesitate to help. The Baal Shem Tov, another way of understanding this verse. Let's dissect the words. Ki tireh chamar sanacha, when you see the donkey of your enemy. Another way of understanding the Hebrew word chamar could either mean a donkey. Chamar could also mean your physical existence, your physical possessions. So when you see a chamar, your physicality as an enemy. Sometimes people see, oh, I have desires. All my physical desires are the enemy of my spiritual desires. And therefore, I see it as the enemy, and I don't want to capitulate, to concede to my physical desires. I don't want to indulge in food, because food is, I'm eating just for gluttonous purposes. I don't want to get a nice car and a nice house and a nice phone and nice clothes and nice this, nice that, because it's all physical. That is a conflict to my spiritual. Says the Baal Shem Tov, you got it wrong. Azov tazozim, of course you should engage in the physical, because our journey of life in this world is a synthesis of the physical and the spiritual coming together. They have to work together. The idea we're learning here is that sometimes you have to take care of the physical, put it aside, and then work on the spiritual. And this is what we're going to talk about here. How exactly to go about doing that. Sometimes we tell our body that I took care of you. Now I'm focusing on my soul. Sometimes you could incentivize yourself. I'll go to shul and I'll do this. I'll study this and I'll do something. I'll get myself an ice cream. Whatever it might be, you know what works for you. Sometimes we have to ignore our body. But the way we demonstrated doing that is to take care of it. But on Friday night, we make sure to eat the Shabbos meal with a hearty appetite. Why? Because the purpose of life and the purpose of a religious experience is to introduce the joy of a mitzvah into this world. The point is to teach the body so it too can learn to enjoy mitzvah performance. For the soul to remain a soul in this world, it needs the body. It needs the combination. And God put the soul into a body that we work together. So by enjoying a delicious Shabbos meal with a good hearty appetite and commemorating that God created the world and God rested on Shabbos and God gave us this wonderful gift and oasis in time, we're inviting our bodies to join us in the joy of Shabbos, the joy of Hashem's presence in life. And in fact, we say this every Shabbos at Kiddush. The idea is, what do we say? In Tashim Shabbos Reglacha, the idea that the Shabbos rest is what elevates, is what boosts us, is what gives us that opportunity for a boost in life. We're celebrating God is the magic of life. So God gives us this opportunity every single week. Right? Every Shabbos, it in fact helps and boosts our productivity for the rest of the week. That's the real pleasure. When the body and soul are able to enjoy this day of rest. Yes, part of the rest is spiritual. You're going to daven, you're going to pray, you're going to study Torah, you're going to appreciate your family and sensitivity. But think about it, it's also a physical gift. You need that. It prevents burnout. It's so important that we have it. So the Talmud, in fact, talks about the reward for delighting in Shabbos, in the physical pleasure, the rest that you enjoy on Shabbos, and the spiritual benefits. Think about it. It's a synthesis of the two. And the same thing in that sense. The best part, you could say, enjoying the food, right? Enjoying the family time, enjoying all the physical benefits that the spiritual benefits are going to give us as well. And in fact, the Talmud talks about this. You know, on Friday night, it talks in the halacha, it's an opportunity for couples to be intimate together. It talks about what types of food to enjoy. It talks about sleeping extra. So the Talmud is specifically, and it gives examples. The Talmud says that you should enjoy beets. That's why people eat chrein, and fish, and heads of garlic, and all these different foods that the Talmud mentions, and meat and wine. Why? It's a mitzvah to enjoy Shabbos. And the mitzvah component elevates the meal to an altogether different place. On a much deeper level, the intimacy that a couple experiences on Shabbos is going to a much spiritual plane. But on a physical level, there's a physical pleasure. And the Baal Shem Tov explained that when we eat, it's not just because the body's hungry. When a couple are being intimate, it's not just for the physical pleasure. There's also a soul energy. The soul is hungry. When you feel your appetite building, You're feeling a byproduct of your soul's desire to elevate the divine purpose in that food, in the intimacy. So it's not just a physical pleasure, it's also a spiritual pleasure. That's, of course, true anytime. You make a bracha on the food, you use the energy of that food. But on Shabbos, the soul is elevated to a new level. And so the body's whole appetite comes from a much finer form. And this is explained in the Talmud at length, the idea that the hunger of Shabbos and the physical pleasures of Shabbos are actually a reflection of the spiritual energy that's present on Shabbos as well. So it's true during the week, the body wants to eat because the soul wants to eat. But from the body's perspective, it just wants to eat, to enjoy, to have energy. It's very difficult to be able to eat altruistically. But on Shabbos, the body's very desire to eat and to enjoy the food and all the other Shabbos pleasures that we indulge in, it's part of the soul's desire to perform this mitzvah. And therefore enjoying the food, which is somewhat, say, during the week, maybe you want to be careful with your carbs and all. Shabbos, enjoy. As they say in Yiddish, lazich voilgem. So the body sometimes can be a conflict with the soul. But we're saying on Shabbos, they come together. It's a spiritual energy that is being enjoyed on Shabbos as well. Now you might ask, who are we fooling? So nice that the Talmud says this. Who's to say that when we're eating that delicious 3-course Shabbos meal, the body's enjoying the Shabbos celebration? You really feel that? Maybe it's just enjoying good food. Maybe it's just enjoying good old sex. What is it all about? Is this really spiritual energy? The Talmud is really trying to make us feel good. What's this about? Is it really such a mitzvah? For being honest, how is Shabbos food and enjoyment, and even the sleep of Shabbos, which you describe, Shena b'Shabbos Taina, the delight and pleasure of the sleep in Shabbos, how is that any different than a regular weeknight sleep? How is it any different than a bra you're having than lunch in a regular day? How is it a different type of intimacy than any other time? And this is where the Korban Pesach comes in, my friends. The Korban Pesach, the Pesach lamb, is a mitzvah we do when the body is hungry. But when the soul is hungry, but when the body is full. Body's not hungry then. We took care of the body. And in this way, it acts as an insurance policy for our ability to derive that bodily pleasure from a mitzvah during the rest of the year. So we discussed the risks that is of inviting the body to the party of a mitzvah. By inviting the body, it might take over the show. The body wants to enjoy the good food. But when you're eating food and you're not hungry, that's not the case. Shabbos tells us that it's in fact possible and desirable to invite the body to the party. And Shabbos demonstrates that the body can join the celebration and not ruin it. There's a time and place for the body to enjoy the mitzvah, not at the Korban Pesach. Pesach celebrates the birth, the very beginning of the Jewish people as a nation. And as with anything that's built to last, you have to make sure the foundation is strong. And this is something that's explained in the Talmud, the idea that when the Jewish people left Egypt, they left bichipazon, they had to run, they had to rush away. Even though their ultimate goal was to get to Sinai and to bring the Torah into the world and to elevate the world when they were just starting off already in Egypt, they had to avoid worldly matters like the plague, pun intended. The first night when they experienced for the first time that divine revelation, it was not a time to be engaging the body. It was a time to ignore the distractions of the body. And therefore, the Torah says they left in a hurry. And when we're sitting at our seders, we are recalling that incident. It's a time when our mitzvah excitement has to be all about the soul, not about the body. So when we start off, we're not ready to invite the body to that part of the party. And that's why we eat the Korban Pesach, the afikoman part of our meal, on a full stomach, when the body is not interested. When we already ate a full dinner. Once we give ourselves a good grounding in the soul on Pesach, so now we're equipped to change the world during the rest of the year. After we learn how to experience the pure bliss of the soul alone by eating the afikoman, which symbolizes the Korban Pesach, now we can start inviting the body to the party. And that's why every Shabbos we enjoy the food and all the other bodily pleasures of Shabbos from a bodily perspective. Because Shabbos, we're told, you should delight in God. He's going to grant you your heart's desires. And we said the delight of Shabbos is the physical with the spiritual energy. Question is, we have 5 more minutes. There was a little bit more I wanted to talk about. Let's see if I could try to summarize a few more points. So we explained why it's important to eat the Korban Pesach on a full stomach, right? To keep the foundation strong. And why it's important to eat the Shabbos meal with an empty stomach. Every Friday you come home, don't eat a lot on a Friday afternoon because you want the body to experience the joy of Shabbos. And that's why husbands buy flowers for their wives. You want to create the atmosphere of that romance. You want the right ambience. And a similar idea could be related to the laws of Pesach. What's the most fundamental thing of Pesach? No chametz, right? There's a lot about talking about chametz, and we have to talk about it. Chametz represents ego, hot ear. Just look at the word chametz and matzah. They both have a mem, they both have a tzaddik, similarity. The difference is the ches and the hay. The ches is closed on top. The hay of matzah lets the ear go out. It's about deflating the ego. Pesach is the time of redemption. We can't allow ourselves to have any ego, right? But then how can we eat chametz during the rest of the year? If chametz symbolizes ego, if ego is off limits, shouldn't our egos be off limits the whole year? And the answer is that ego is basically a fact of life. In a way, we need our egos. Without ego, would any of us be successful at anything? Would you ever have established any business or get anything done without your ego? Would we bother trying to make a name for ourselves, have a reputation? What would the world even look like without egos? So when we look at it this way, we start to see the ego as something that is acceptable. Right? We take 1 week of the year, Pesach, and we eliminate the ego. That's what we do on Pesach. So here is something fascinating that the Rebbe said. When a person deals with chametz all year long, going about life in the regular mundane way, physical world with all its influences, it's still impossible to avoid any trace of ego. A whole year we eat chametz. Yes, we have to work on our ego year round, but you need that ego too. You need a healthy ego, you could say, right? Healthy ego is what helps people have a self-esteem and work and be successful. Comes Pesach, though, we eliminate our egos. We get rid of it. No chametz allowed. No ego. Even if the ego is minute, chametz is forbidden, the mashu, nothing. Why is that? Many of the mitzvahs we do are exceptionally beautiful, very enjoyable. When we experience the scotch and cigars in the sukkah weather, the peaceful Shabbos candlelighting, or the joy on the face of a bar mitzvah boy. So, wow, Jewish life is amazing. What could be better than this? Feels good. So what do we say? Enjoy your Yiddishkeit. Find all the pleasures of Yiddishkeit, enjoy it, and enjoy it with others too. Shul should be enjoyable, Shabbos should be enjoyable, well, every mitzvah should be enjoyable. Because pleasure in doing a mitzvah is a fantastic benefit. And so the litmus test of the way we experience Yiddishkeit is that the body should be on board with the soul. But while this pleasure is enjoyable, and that's why we have good, delicious food that we eat at our Shabbos meals and all the other pleasures that we discuss, it's important to remember that that is not the sum total of a mitzvah. At the end of the day, why do we do a mitzvah? Not because I enjoy it, but because God told me to. It's the divine will. Now, I'm not trying to dampen the enjoyment of the mitzvah that we have. What happens if 1 week you're not feeling the peaceful Shabbos spirit when it comes to lighting the Shabbos candles? What if the kids took up all the energy during the weekend? I'm frustrated and I just want to curl up in bed with a book and forget about everything else. This is where we have to remember the message. I'm not doing it just because I enjoy it. Because if it's what I enjoy, then what happens if I'm not in the mood right now? Don't forget about it. This is what the Korban Pesach teaches us. It teaches us to remember that at the end of the day, sometimes we need to ignore our body and remember what the mitzvah is really about. So yes, year round, you can enjoy the mitzvahs with gusto, with pleasure, with fanfare, with everything. Once a year, we get the reminder that we can master, and that is do whatever mitzvah comes our way, regardless of how it makes us feel, and celebrate it because this is what God told me to do. Celebrate it with the same excitement, enthusiasm, and passion that I would even if I were to enjoy it. That's what the Korban Pesach teaches us. I hope we learned that idea, that lesson today. Mitzvahs are for enjoying. But what does the Afikoman teach us? The ultimate goal is, what if we could do all the mitzvahs with a similar fervor, whether physically enjoyable or not so? I still want to enjoy my mitzvahs because God said so. And this is the lesson that we could all take to heart. It's important to remember that the body's joy is a benefit and it's an important function of every mitzvah, but the end goal mitzvah is, what does mitzvah mean? Not just commandment, but connection to, it's a connection to Hashem. And so I do the mitzvah because God said so, not only because I enjoy doing it. Tomorrow, please God, will continue. And I think tomorrow we're going to talk about a little bit, another dynamic, an aspect of the Korban Pesach, how to turn your home into a divine temple. How do we do that, whether we're in the mood or not? I'm going to work on a nice, interesting shiur. Of course, share with you the Gemara I'm learning as well and make it as interesting as possible. Looking forward to see you all. Sei gesund. Stay safe. Stay sane. Carpe diem. Remember the past. Live the present and trust your future.
Amen.